Yes, we're in England, in London, and I've just been down to the Wolsey restaurant, the scene of my first conversation with my father-in-law. As every young man does, you have the opportunity of asking your father-in-law to be if you can marry his daughter, and this is how it happened for me. Claire and I set our wedding date for June 12th in 2009 in Utah, and Claire's father had been excluded from her first wedding, and she wanted him to give her away this time. Held at Cliveden, a large country house turned into a hotel north of London, her first wedding had all the expectations a young couple could have. The formality of the house plus the expense made everyone uptight. Her father was not invited. Claire never told me. Oh, I'm not going to read that paragraph. As we planned our wedding, I said I'd take Stuart to lunch to ask his permission to marry his daughter. I reserved a table at the Wolsey on Piccadilly Street in Mayfair, not far from the Ritz. And as in a fairy tale, Claire gave me 2 pieces of advice. Don't be late, and don't try to hide anything. Stuart can tell when you lie. The first to arrive, I watched his entrance from the doorway. He surveyed the room, then raised his arm in greeting as he wended his way through busy waiters working the close-knit tables. My future father-in-law was a big man, and his abundant energy propelled him. Napkin in hand, I stood up. "Hello, Stuart." Sit down, he said. We shook hands, and he looked around the restaurant and said, "I remember when it was a bank." "Really?" "Yes, see those happy diners walking out over there? That used to be the vault." "Really?" "Yes, really. Before being a bank, it was a motor car sales room for Wolsey Motors. You ever heard of the car?" "No." "You don't know about cars, do you?" "No, I don't." He flipped his napkin open and fished out his reading glasses while he perused the menu, and without looking up, he announced, "I know why you invited me here, and the answer is no." "Really? You don't know what I'm going to ask you." "You want me to bless a marriage to Claire, give you my permission, and the answer is no." "Really?" "Yeah, that's what I said, isn't it? I didn't like her first husband either." "You don't like me?" "Well, I don't know you, and that's good enough reason not to like you, isn't it?" "No." "Are you disagreeing with me?" "No." The waiter interrupted to ask about drinks. Had we looked at the menu? Having given him our order, Stuart showed me his tie, a florid, old-fashioned silk tie with food stains. "I found it in the skip." "What's a skip?" Stuart regarded me before he said, "It's what you dump trash in." Claire told me he prided his finds and that his apartment was full of odd things, stacks of napkins from fancy restaurants, his racing trophies, and a collection of knobs off the fixtures in London loos. Plus a Barbara Hepworth bronze head of his mother as a young girl with braids. He intended to leave the bust to Claire because she resembled her grandmother. Stuart was a racing aficionado flown around the world to judge car shows, to be a race commentator, and as a young man he once ran a parade lap at the Isle of Man TT motorcycle racing, driving the triangle at 94 miles per hour over a course he had never seen. After his heart attack, he couldn't race, and instead, in front of the grandstand, he would dive off a motorcycle of a very high pole into a pool of water, not unlike Evel Knievel. Other times he rode his bike, a BMW 900 flathead, from Calais to Malta, stopping only for food, fuel, and to piss. "Really, in a skip?" "Yes, always on the lookout." "What's your passion, Robert?" Claire. No, I don't mean that. How do you earn your crust? My what? Your living. Oh, I make films and write boo, but the drinks arrived and the conversation shifted gears. That bloody wife of mine rose, and he accelerated into a triad about the woman he said he should never have married. The best part was having Claire. I loved the little girl, so full of life, and then she let her mother talk her into not seeing me for years, and that hurt, gave me a heart attack. I'm glad we're friends again. Our entrees arrived, and he was having the lamb shank. Early in my relationship with Claire, I'd been asked to join him and several of his mates for lunch. Younger men as gobsmacked with cars as Stuart. They drove the conversation around me, over me, and past me. I listened to their latest purchases and their near deaths at high speeds. They talked jargon about Formula One and drivers' standings. I looked for an opening, but there wasn't much uptake on poetry or art or living out west near Zion National Park. Although one of Stuart's friends, feeling sorry for me, said he'd driven a GT40 out west. He loved those long, straight roads, perfect for hitting terrific speeds. He asked me what I drove, and I said, well, I drive a Subaru Forester. Stuart twisted his water glass by its stem, observing the play of sunlight through the liquid onto the white tablecloth. He jiggled it a little, and the light shimmered across the cloth. The other mistake Claire's making is with her son. She thinks he's going to be a Formula One driver, but Jude doesn't have the killer instinct. Really? Claire believes he does. She says he has potential. Hasn't he been racing since he was 7? Claire told me that at 2 he crawled to the TV and turned the channels until he found the racing. Maybe Jude did, but it's a mother's love to think he'll be in Formula One. You have to be noticed. No good being at the back. I could help. I told them to go into 2-seaters and work up from there, but she wouldn't listen. No, she said, he has to be in a single-seater to be a contender. Problem is, you have to place to be noticed. I didn't know. But Jude was about to move up to GP2, one level below Formula One. That must take talent, I thought. But here was Stuart saying he didn't believe Jake had what it takes. Good grub, Stuart said, reaching for the dish of mashed potatoes. Racing is spectacle. All sport is. In ancient days, the spectacle united the whole city, and it gave everyone a shared experience. Now today, it's worldwide. Formula One is the most viewed sport on TV, even more than your American football. Stuart was avoiding any mention of Claire and myself or our wedding. Stuart, it would mean a lot to Claire if you'd give her away. She would know. But you were left out of her first wedding, and we thought, pass the carrots. The problem with Jude's racing is what he doesn't understand. He's too polite. He's not an attacker. Ever seen a racing car? No. They're heavy, massive things. They're awkward and passive when at rest before the start. They have to be manhandled into position. But once lined up, they're impatient. Once started, they transform all that mass into agility, into power, massive power. I listened as he talked about cars and racing. Ever watch a swan on land? No? They're awkward. They look odd until they enter the water. Then they are all grace. The same for the car. The driver has to have style and courage without disorder. Wouldn't you want to do this for Claire? Rose won't be there. He finished dishing out the last of the carrots, and he looked at me for a long moment. You have to attack to win. Think of the tracks. The most dangerous is Nürburgring. Spa is the fastest. Monza exhausting. The driver has to attack. It's battle. You don't know anything about that, do you? What'd you say you do? No, but Claire is taking me to a race. Which one? Monaco. Oh, the most torturous. Claire shouldn't get married. She ought to have a fling with you, but then move on and have her heart broken 10 times. Then choose a man with more standing and not an American. Einstein's definition of insanity is to repeat the same action over and over, expecting a different outcome. I ate and drank from anxiety, and where we sat, the tables were close together. On either side of us, diners began to glance over, interrupting their conversation to listen to ours, to verify Stuart's statements and hear my reactions. As our meal finished, the other tables became even quieter. Due to decades near loud engines, Stuart's voice was calibrated higher than others, and as the two tables on either side of us quieted, other tables further away began to listen. Stuart was enjoying himself. At dessert, I circled back to our wedding. Wouldn't you want to please Claire? Of course I would. Then come to our wedding, give her away. Well, that might please her, but it won't please me. A favor to her? Nope, not interested. Dessert arrived, pecan pie for me and cheese and crackers for Stuart. In our quadrant of the restaurant, it had grown quiet, and I listened only to the delicate clink of glasses, the ting of silver on china, and the more distant hubbub in the rest of the room. The silence around our table bore down on me like the last judgment. Would you like coffee, Stuart? Yes. The other tables had emptied when our coffee arrived. I felt defeated. What I say won't make any difference, will it? Said Stuart. No, but we hope giving Claire away would give you pleasure. It would please her. I'd say no to anyone. Don't take it personally. I opened my mouth. He said, don't bother. I shut my mouth. Stuart stretched back in his chair, placed his napkin on the table, and pushed himself up. Thanks for the grub.